we're doing this at the request of UNIDO. UNIDO is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Over the years, the center's expertise has been engaged by the government of Ghana through the Ministry of Energy, Energy Commission, and other agencies. We've also worked with a lot of multilaterals and bilaterals. As I mentioned a while ago, we've worked with UNIDO, the UNDP, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the International Renewable Energy Agency, ECOWAS itself, DANIDA, and many others. Our contribution to national development has ranged from our input to shaping Ghana's renewable energy law, supporting the development of national energy policy and development plans, providing research support in biomass and solar resources assessment, and many more. At the request of the World Bank, the center recently conducted an impact assessment study on Ghana's energy transition framework, which seeks to help Ghana achieve net zero emissions by 2070. And just last month, the Vice Chancellor signed a contract for us to provide support to the Energy Commission in the development of regulations on electric vehicle charging. So through our network of fellows, of over 90 fellows across the university, we conduct research in 7 broad areas, and these are namely energy policy and system modeling, solar PV, solar energy, PV and thermal, wind and hydro. In fact, just yesterday, I forwarded to fellows of the center recent work that's been published on wind-powered irrigation systems in Ghana. We are researching energy efficiency and demand-side management, biomass and biofuels, green hydrogen, and sustainable transport. So back to today's event, we know that access to clean cooking remains one of the greatest challenges to the attainment of the SDGs. And in this case, it will be SDG number 7 on clean and affordable cooking. Here in Ghana, deliberate policies have been implemented over the years to encourage the use of LPG as a preferred source for cooking, as a preferred fuel for cooking, sorry. And this, among others, is to reduce the pressure on forests, to reduce time spent by mostly women and girls in gathering firewood, and to have a safer and cleaner cooking environment. We are aware that Ghana's petroleum downstream sector is regulated by the National Petroleum Authority, NPA, and as part of its activities, the NPA has recently introduced the LPG cylinder recirculation program. So we are privileged today to receive a high-powered team from the authority to engage us, the university community. As in the university community, our invited guests on this initiative. So a number of questions that would be answered by our esteemed guests would include: how is this cylinder recirculation program designed? How does this promote access to clean and safe cooking? How has it performed so far? What are its success stories and its challenges? And more importantly, as the provost mentioned, how can we as a university community support this initiative? So to do this, we have the team that we have comprises Mr. Obed Crane Boachi. Obed, let's see you. We have Dr. Joseph Wilson, But before, Obed is head of gas regulation. And Doc, please, you may get up now. Sorry. So Dr. Wilson is in charge of research, monitoring, and evaluation. We have Said Kutia Ubedala. Hope I got your name correct. He is in charge of quality control. He's head of quality control. We have Mohammed Abdul Kudus. He is head of communications. Kudus, you didn't score a goal yesterday. We have Eunice Budu Nyakon, head consumer service. We have Betty Nana Ajua Ofori, Ashanti regional manager. We have Nana Yao Akumia, inspections officer, Ashanti region. We have Rhoda Annan, inspections and monitoring officer, Ashanti region. Rhoda, let's see you. Ernest Ansan is regional inspections and monitoring officer, Ashanti region. Okay, Ernest is up already. Then we have Ben Amate, who is quality assurance officer, Ashanti regional office. Is Ben here? Yes. So I would like to thank you all on this note and hand over back to Dr. Jonathan Atukwe Kwe.
You got my name spot on. Thank you so much. I would like to make a little clarification. In mentioning the distinguished professor's name, I forgot to add emeritus. Please, he is Professor Emeritus Francis W.Y. Momade. Okay, that's his name. At this juncture, I will invite Dr. Jones Owusu Chumesi to read the profile of the first speaker. Let's welcome him with applause.
Thank you. Let's all imagine a future in Ghana where every household is using clean energy. And I believe the work of our distinguished speaker, together with his team, is helping us go in that direction. I'm reading the profile of Dr. Joseph Wilson, who is also our keynote speaker. Dr. Wilson is the Director for Research, Monitoring, and Evaluation at NPA, and he has 10 years work experience in the petroleum sector in Ghana. He headed the research unit of NPA for over 8 years before assuming his current position. He holds a PhD in Development Economics, MPhil in Economics from the University of Ghana, Legon, and a BS degree in Agric Economics from KNUST. He's also a certified data scientist from Simplilearn and IBM. He's a member of the European Association of Environmental and Resource Economists and the Africa Association of Environmental and Resource Economists. Dr. Wilson has served on several national committees, including the National LPG Policy Implementation Committee, Petroleum Downstream Redistribution Committee, National Infrastructure Plan Committee, Technical Committee on Minimum Wage, and National Steering Committee on Informal Economy. He has presented papers at the following conferences: the 26th Annual Conference of the European Association of Environmental and Resource Economists, the 15th Annual Meeting of Environment for Development Initiative. He has also produced the following research work to support the growth of petroleum downstream. These include welfare impact of petroleum product subsidies in Ghana, impact of petroleum downstream deregulation policy on consumers and operation of petroleum services providers, evaluation of impact of premixed fuel supply on the livelihood of the fishing community in Ghana. And last but not least, customer satisfaction with the quality and quantity of petroleum products in Ghana. Some of his research work that he has published in peer-reviewed journal include: did COVID-19 change the availability and the use of clean energy for cooking? If you want the answer, go and read. And then institutional quality and technical efficiency of renewable electricity program production in sub-Saharan Africa. His research interests include efficiency analysis, total productivity analysis, welfare impact analysis, economic analysis, and machine learning modeling and their application to the energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Dr. Joseph Wilson. You're welcome, Doc.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. Please permit me to stand on all existing protocols. Good morning once again. I deem it a great pleasure to be here this morning for this special engagement on the LPG cylinder recirculation model with the engineering community of the Kenyan University. I'm reading this message on behalf of my boss and Chief Executive of the National Petroleum Authority, Honorable Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, who would have been here to engage with you considering he is a scholar. However, he is attending another equally important assignment, hence his absence. He sends his sincere apologies and warm regards to all of you. The theme for today's engagement, that is towards clean cooking in Ghana, an overview of the LPG cylinder recirculation model, is profound as today, June 7, is World LPG Day. Also, it is very key because most governments all over the world are striving to reduce over-reliance on wood fuel and also emphasize on the use of clean fuel. Although access to modern and efficient energy for cooking is recognized as a key global development target, we have about 1/3 of the world population still lack access to clean cooking technology, according to World Health Organization 2023. And currently, we have over 3 billion people in the world without access to clean cooking energy, mostly from Africa and Asia. This inequity predominantly impacts women and children in developing countries because they bear the primary and heaviest burden of collecting firewood for cooking and also managing domestic tasks. This engagement presents the opportunity for us to discuss the role of research institutions in the implementation of cylinder recirculation model and the promotion of LPG in general. Our engagement today will address lingering concerns such as employment, business opportunities in the CRM value chain, the impact of CRM on the price of LPG, and the overall impact on access to LPG. Ladies and gentlemen, LPG is a portable, clean, and efficient energy source which is readily available to consumers around the world. LPG is primarily obtained from natural gas and oil production, but is also produced increasingly from renewable sources. Its unique properties makes it a versatile energy source which can be used in more than 1,000 different applications. LPG is noted to be a clean, safe, and healthier form of fuel for cooking and other household applications. According to the World LPG Association, as I earlier on indicated, we have over 3 million people who use LPG for various applications. In the case of Ghana, we have about 37% of the households who are currently using LPG. And in the urban areas, we have 51%. In the rural areas, we have 15%. Whilst we have 37% of households using LPG, we have more than 50% of households who still rely on biomass for cooking. And this is a very disturbing trend. Looking at the policies and programs that are in 2010, where access to LPG was about 25%, and currently we are talking about 37%. And as I earlier on indicated, even though we are at 37%, in terms of the use of biomass is still very high. That is, we are talking about more than 50% currently. So access to LPG is important to government because since the late 1990s, government has promoted LPG as a clean alternative fuel to wood fuel, which is predominantly for cooking in Ghana. We have sought to make LPG available in all parts of the country to enable Ghanaians to make a switch from charcoal and firewood to LPG. That is, in 2010, the use of wood fuel was around 70%. But then in 2020, it has reduced to about 54%. And all these are as a result of the interventions that government put in place. So in the year 2017, the government introduced a new national LPG promotion policy. And the goal of the policy was to achieve at least 50% access to LPG by the year 2030. This policy and goal were set as government realized the rate of growth in access to LPG over the years was not as desired. So consequently, government considered new ways of distributing LPG to improve access. This led to the introduction of the cylinder recirculation model. The cylinder recirculation model is an efficient mode of distribution of LPG as it brings LPG closer to consumers, addresses safety issues, and creates more jobs for our people as the value chain expands. One thing that we have realized, there are three main critical challenges that affect LPG adoption at the household level. We have one being access, then we have availability, and also we have affordability. That is the 3 A's. To some extent, regarding availability, we've been able to address that challenges. Now we don't have issue with shortage of LPG. We have storage and other infrastructure available for supply of LPG. The other challenges we have, which is access and affordability, have been the main issue confronting LPG adoption in Ghana. So in the case of accessibility, the cylinder recirculation model is expected to address the issue of accessibility, because with the case of a cylinder recirculation model, we do not need refilling plants. We have exchange points, which are mainly cages for where consumers can go and exchange their empty cylinders for filled ones. So if you compare to the existing model that we have, where cylinders are owned by consumers and also the LPG marketing companies have to make investment in way filling plant, that the buying bullets and also others, the cost outlay is very high compared to exchange points. So this means that if we implement or we start with a cylinder recirculation model, access to LPG can be brought to the doorsteps of consumers because we have cages at filling stations, you have cages also in the communities where consumers can go and exchange their empty cylinders for filled ones. So in September last year, the MPA announced the full rollout of the country. Various service providers were issued licenses to begin the installation of cylinder exchange points and infrastructure for the distribution of LPG. We are happy to inform you today that Ghanaians will begin to exchange their old cylinders for new cylinders under the CRM in the coming weeks. Consequently, you will begin to see cages in your communities where you can access LPG without having to travel a long distance. While facilitating the implementation of the CRM, the MPA had several engagements with service providers, industry experts, and external stakeholders. The MPA has also conducted several consumer sensitization campaigns and programs to educate the public on CRM and the safe use of LPG in general. Our presence here today is to continue that exercise and educate you all about the need to switch from firewood and charcoal to LPG, and more importantly, participate in the CRM when you see the cages in your communities. For us at MPA, we consider educational and research institutions such as the School of Engineering as key in the implementation of CRM, promotion and also use of LPG, and improvement of the petroleum downstream sector in general. There are opportunities for research in the area of the use of LPG, the benefit of using LPG for cooking, and the socioeconomic impact of LPG on the lives of people. Broader topics such as the role of LPG and gas in general in energy transition could also be considered. The engineers in this school are encouraged to study the CRM implementation framework and come up with innovations in the area of the design of cages, cylinder transportation trucks, cylinder distribution outlet, and other infrastructure. The MPA is ready to facilitate relationships with industry for the use of such innovations, and where possible, obtain funding for some of these research and innovations. When Prof. Emeritus was giving the welcome address, I think he raised this issue, and we have had engagement with the provost already, and MPA is prepared, is ready to partner with the institution on areas of research and other areas that will be of mutual benefit to both the MPA and also the college. I wish to end by expressing gratitude to the provost of the college, the dean, and the faculty for inviting us to engage with you. We thank you all for coming and look forward to a fruitful deliberations with you. We are hopeful that at the end of the day, you will get more ideas from you that would improve our implementation of the cylinder recirculation model and promotion of LPG in general. Happy World LPG Day, and thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph Wilson. I believe we have students amongst us. You are making notes, right? Because there will be a Q&A session. So you can ask your questions, okay? Without much ado, I will invite Professor Samson Kofi Che, who is the head of the Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency here at the Kumasi Technical University. Let's welcome him with a clap.
All right, thank you so much, It's an honor to be called upon to read the profile of the next speaker, who is in the person of Mr. Obed Crane Boache. Judging from what you might have heard from our main speaker, who gave us the keynote address, one may imagine such a great work the NPA is doing, and for it to be effective, you may need somebody to champion the regulation so that consumers like you and I may, of course, be happy in that we will actually receive value for money. And we have Mr. Crane Boache Obed, who is the head of gas commercialization regulation at the NPA. In fact, he is an energy professional, and honestly, he has over 12 years experience in that industry. Mr. Boache holds a degree in information technology from the Valley View University in Accra, Ghana, and also a master's in information technology for the oil and gas industry from the Robert Gordon University of Aberdeen in the United Kingdom. Mr. Crane Boache has a great depth of understanding of the energy industry, specifically the downstream processing, talking about the petroleum sector in Ghana. He has actually been championing the preparation of some of the government policies and even the implementation programs, particularly the use of LPG in the country. And as a result of the experience he has acquired, he has been great as far as some of these duties here are concerned. Mr. Boache actually works as the head of gas commercialization regulation at the NPA. And his department is solely responsible for the promotion and the regulation of the use of LPG for household cooking and various applications. He is also tasked with the preparation of a plan for the use of compressed natural gas for transportation. Mr. Crane Boache is an energy transition champion, an expert indeed, and he has become like an icon as far as the implementation of the cylinder recirculation model is concerned. And his main aim is to ensure that as part of efforts to achieve the 7th SDG goal, he will ensure that he increases access and improves safety in distribution of LPG in Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as a welcome to the podium, Mr. Obed Crane Boache.
Is this the morning or afternoon? It's afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. That's a big honor done to me by the Honorable Professor. Thank you for the great introduction. I would beg to stand on the existing protocols because we realize there are several professors, Professor Emeritus leading, and we didn't get the names of all of you. And so we wouldn't want to leave any of you out. And so I will beg to stand on existing protocols. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to expand on the presentation Dr. Wilson gave us. And so I'll take you through a presentation on the cylinder recirculation model, how it came about, a history of it, and then we'll look at the LPG value chain in Ghana. We would look at the actors in the cylinder recirculation model. I'll first explain what we mean by the cylinder recirculation model, the actors, the roles of the actors, and then you see the opportunities in in that part. And then we also talk about some of the strategies that we are rolling out in terms of implementing the CRM. I'll give you an update of where we are so far since we started this implementation of the CRM. And then we would open the floor for you to make contributions and also ask questions where you need clarification. And so by way of history, I was at the Ministry of Energy for 10 years or so, and somewhere in 2012, we started promotion of LPG in the rural areas. Director Wilson mentioned that around that time, access to LPG was around 23%, and we realized access in the rural areas was hovering around 6.5%, whilst that in the urban areas was around 35%. And so government thought of ideas, how could we increase access in the rural areas? Because that's where the felling of trees and all of that happens mostly. And so somewhere in 2013, the ministry started thinking about that, and then we started preparation of a policy to guide promotion of LPG in that regard. That process was ongoing, and then somewhere in 2017, I'm sure some of you remember, there was an explosion at Atomic, where an LPG facility, exploded, and then there were casualties and all of that. And so most people think that was the event for which the CRM was introduced, but the policy preparation had started based on research and the ministry's own activities. And so the explosion around that time sort of gave the policy the impetus. Cabinet requested for the policy was presented, and then Cabinet approved the policy for implementation. We had done research, we had been to countries like Cote d'Ivoire that were implementing the CRM already, and so Cabinet approved the policy and then tasked the National Petroleum Authority to implement the CRM as the model for distribution of LPG, particularly for household use. And so what the NPA did, based on the instruction of the Ministry of Energy, was to form a National Implementation Committee. And this was made up of industry stakeholders, people from Parliament, people from civil society organizations, our sister regulatory agencies, Fire Service was involved, EPA, and all key regulatory institutions. And so this committee came up with a framework. When we talk about framework, it includes the guidelines for implementation of the CRM, it includes the licensing framework, even the structure of the model itself, how we intend to transition the current model to where we want to be. It was a committee that prepared this framework. And then fast forward somewhere 2019, we thought it wise to do a pilot to at least see how the model would be. And so we piloted in some regions. We did Obuase, we did Kwaibi Brim, we did END, we did about 3 or 4 regions. And then we had some lessons from the pilot implementation. What we did in the pilot is that at that time we didn't have the bottling plants ready. And so we used the existing refilling stations to mimic the role of the bottling plant and fill some cylinders, and then we go to distribute to encourage people to then exchange rather than coming back to the station to fill. So that pilot, it gave us a lot of lessons. And then fast forward again to somewhere the year 2023, that's last year, most of our bottling plants became ready. The bottling plant, as you'll see later, is a very key component in achieving a successful rollout of the cylinder recirculation model. And so that is the history of the CRM, starting from the National LPG Promotion Policy, and then us beginning to roll out the CRM. So as you can see, we've come a long way. We've been over 7 years in this implementation, but we believe we've made a lot of progress, and very soon, as I said, Prof said, you'll begin to see the cylinders in your areas. And so one will ask again, why are we doing this? The LPG promotion policy has a goal of achieving 50% access to LPG. And by doing that, we want to improve access to LPG, or to achieve that, we want to improve access. As Doctor mentioned, the 3 A's are the main barriers for the use of LPG. When it comes to availability, yes, we import 60% of our LPG, and so we have guaranteed imports. And we have a good plan these days that makes sure there's no shortage. We also get 40% from Atuabo, from the gas processing plant. You've learned of Central Refinery. We are going to get additional LPG from there. So in terms of availability, we believe we've been able to tackle that issue. The 2 main issues now are access. and then affordability, which comes to pricing. Yes, one will say pricing is very key, but the product has to be there for the person to even want to use it. And we think CRM is a good vehicle with regards to bringing access to consumers. And so yes, we want to improve access. Also, we want to improve safety in the distribution of LPG. Yes, CRM may still have some safety challenges. I mean, with regards to the use of LPG, there are always safety concerns. But then we believe CRM takes a lot of the safety issues out of the distribution of LPG. For instance, if you use the explosion that happened, if you consider the siting or the location of the facility, the impact is different from, with the bottling plants in the CRM, where the bottling plants would be located in industrial areas or places out of town or in very remote areas. And so there are safety issues also when it comes to even the use of the cylinders itself. Maintenance, currently there's no maintenance responsibility. The CRM introduces that, which I'll touch on later. And so we believe with the CRM model, we will be able to also improve safety in the distribution of LPG. And then adoption. Once you make LPG more accessible, with CRM, we will bring LPG more closer to the consumer. Once the product is very close to the consumer, they are cooking, it gets finished, just behind the house, they can get another bottle to go and use. They don't fall back on charcoal or firewood again. They just go and pick another one and use. So they adopt the product, and then they use the product only rather than doing fuel stacking. And then, of course, energy transition. I was part of the team that developed the country's energy transition plan, and we see LPG as a key fuel for the clean cooking sector and even for transportation as well. And so clean cooking is one of the 6 pillars of achieving our decarbonization objectives. We believe once we are able to convert a lot of our people onto LPG, we can, get a lot of benefits in terms of emission reduction. And so in terms of our energy transition, achieving the goal of 50% by 2030 is going to contribute immensely to that. And so we look at the current LPG value chain. As I mentioned, 40% of our LPG comes from refining and gas processing from Atuabo and Tamale refinery. And then the 60% we import into the country. It comes into storage, and then we use what we call the bulk road vehicles or the tankers to move some of the product to where we call the refilling stations. That is where currently we go, we take our cylinders to, and then we fill our cylinders. And from there, vehicular users also go there. You can see some taxis and trotters using LPG. They go to these places, and then they fill their vehicles, and then they can use. The refilling stations, which are operated by the LPG marketing companies, okay? The LPG marketing companies use the same BRVs or bulk road vehicles, tankers, to move some of the products in bulk to the people or the areas we call the bulk or commercial users. So for instance, if KNUST has a kitchen, you could have an LPG MC bring a truck and then supply to the kitchen. They can have a small tank behind where then the LPG MC supply. They supply schools, they supply hospitals, hotels, and such facilities that cook on a large scale. So this has largely been our LPG market in terms of the structure for some years now. A key part of this is what you see in the middle, the LPG refilling stations. Before you can bring LPG into a community or into an area, you have to set up a refilling station. And these refilling stations are quite expensive. Today, if you want to set up a refilling station, it will cost you not less than $1 million to set an LPG filling station. And so we thought of ways where we can bring LPG closer to the consumer without having to set up the refilling station, okay? And so, sorry, the figure is $1 million Ghana cedis, not dollars, okay? This is a research institution. I need to correct that. $1 million Ghana cedis to set up the small size of the refilling station. And so, the challenge was, for a community, a town or village where the numbers are not huge, the businessman or the LPGMC would now consider whether bringing an investment of the magnitude of $1 million Ghana cedis would make economic value. And so that is the challenge. We realize whilst they are comfortable setting up stations in the cities and the urban areas, The peri-urban areas and the rural areas where we need people to now switch to LPG, they are not interested in going there because of the lack of value in terms of economics, as a businessman would see. And so what does the cylinder recirculation present, how different it is? With the cylinder recirculation model, what we will have, it will start at the bottling plant. We would have a bottling plant. Now this is a huge automated plant, usually with a carousel that has arms for filling the cylinders. And we will locate these bottling plants in industrial areas and also in the outskirts of town and all of that, as I mentioned. So you have cylinders brought there in huge quantities, and then you fill these cylinders or you bottle them, and then you transport these cylinders in bulk into areas like the cylinder distribution outlets or the cylinder depot. And then from there, you break it down into smaller quantities into where we call the cylinder exchange points. These will be smaller cages that will be in our communities. And so if you look at the model, the cylinder goes from the bottling plant, it gets to the distribution outlet or the depot, a holding area where it is broken bulk, it gets to the outlet or the exchange point, and then from there, the consumer returns it through the same cycle, and then it comes back to the bottling plant. So that cycle of the cylinder moving from the bottling plant, going all the way and coming back to the bottling plant is what we call the cylinder recirculation model. And a key part of this is also the cylinder manufacturing and refurbishment, which you can see on the far right up there. We anticipate, in fact, by a matter of policy, we want to produce all of our cylinders here in Ghana. We have cylinder manufacturing companies, which I'll demonstrate later. And so they will be responsible for refurbishment. In this model, there will be responsibility for the cylinder. Currently, we own our cylinder. Somebody may have used their cylinders for 10, 15 years. They would have never refurbished it before. In fact, if you are in Kumasi and, for instance, you want to refurbish your cylinder, there is no facility, approved facility here to refurbish a cylinder. Only a manufacturing and refurbishment company can do that, not a welder. And there are only 4 of such companies, and they are in Tema and Accra. And so you can see the challenge when it comes to refurbishment of cylinders. And this is what leads to the lack of maintenance of cylinders is what leads to a lot of the accidents in the homes, which we usually hear when there are accidents. And so this is the cylinder recirculation model. As you can see, it takes away the cost of the refilling plant. Yes, there must be investment in the bottling plant, but aside that, it doesn't cost much to have a cage in the communities. And so, for instance, if there's a bottling plant in Kumasi, which there is, and now you want to send LPG to somewhere, let's say in somewhere after Bekwai or somewhere, all you need to is to place a cage there and then transport cylinders there without having to invest heavily. So that is the cylinder recirculation model, and that is the changes it will make into our value chain. You would realize there are new opportunities or there are new activities, the bottling plant activity, the cylinder transportation, also the depot facility, and even down along the chain, the resellers would also be there. So it brings some changes. It actually expands the value chain as compared to the old model. So we'll look at some of the actors in the value chain. And so, for instance, there's the bulk distribution companies, or what we call the BDCs. We've always heard, with CRM, people are going to lose jobs and all of that. And so what we are trying to do now is to let you see the actors in the value chain, how their functions will change, whether, jobs will be lost or whether we are adding jobs. And then it also presents the opportunities because these are areas where you could invest, or when we go on to the next slide, there'll be facilities where you can research into on producing some of them for the various actors. And so the BIDEX or the BDCs, what they do is they import LPG, they store it, and then they sell on to the LPG marketing companies. That is what they presently do. Under the CRM, they will still do the same thing. They'll import LPG, they'll store, and then they'll sell to the LPG marketing companies who will sell to the bulk users, but now they also sell to the bottling plants as well. So their activity will still very much be in effect, and we don't anticipate that any jobs will be lost in this part. Then you have the bulk LPG transporters. These are the tanker operators, those who move LPG in bulk. Currently, what they do is they move LPG from the thermal area, from the Atuabo area, to all parts of the country with their tankers. And so they serve the refilling outlets and then the bulk consumers. Under the CRM, what are they going to do? They are still going to serve the bulk consumers, and some of the refill stations will still be maintained. They'll be given a facelift to operate as auto gas stations to serve vehicles. These bulk vehicles will again move product to them. But then now, they'll send a lot of the product to the bottling plant, which will be doing large-scale refilling of cylinders. So their activities are still going to be very relevant under the CRM because we don't have pipelines coming from Tema to this part of the country. Now, the CRM brings opportunity for transportation of cylinders. This is not in the current model. And so for that opportunity, they will transport cylinders first from the cylinder manufacturing company to the bottling plant. Between the bottling plant and the depot, there is also the opportunity for them to transport empty and filled cylinders. And then also to the cylinder distribution outlet, and then finally to the cylinder exchange points. So there's opportunity for one to operate in this area. Now, this is a new line of jobs that we are creating as part of the CRM. And as I mentioned, in terms of areas of research or areas of technology and innovation, in our framework, for instance, we have an idea of how we want these trucks to look, okay, based on our model or our understanding of the model in certain areas. But engineers here can look at our country, the challenges we have with our road system, for instance, and design or come up with trucks or advice on how to design trucks such that we minimize any anticipated accidents or anything of that sort. So these are areas, for instance, that we can look at into being innovative and then improving what we have in our framework. Again, for the cylinder bottling company, they will now be the primary actors in terms of filling the cylinders. They will be responsible for procuring the cylinders. Now, we all have to buy a cylinder before we can use LPG. Under the CRM model, the bottling plant will buy the cylinders in bulk, and then they will own the cylinder, they will brand the cylinder, so you would have brands like Goy, brands like Total, or all of that. And then once they brand the cylinders, they will take it to their bottling facilities, which I'll come to later. They'll fill them, and then the LPG MCs would take branded cylinders filled from them. Okay, so they will supply their cylinders, and then the LPG marketing companies will take it from there. So that is the role of the bottling plant company. And they are employing people too, so you can see a lot of jobs being created there. Then we come to the LPG marketing companies. The LPG marketing companies are very key actors. In fact, they are the key actors who have held the industry for this long. Currently, what they do is they procure LPG in bulk from the BDCs, they take it to their refilling stations, and then they serve domestic consumers and then commercial consumers also. Under the CRM, there's going to be some change in the activity. As I said, they will serve auto gas stations. They will still continue to serve bulk users. With the domestic side, what will change is, instead of them filling cylinders at their station, they will take cylinders from the bottling plant pre-filled, and then they will distribute them in the cylinder exchange point. That is the change to the activity of the LPG marketing companies and dealers. And I always say to them when I engage them, for an LPG marketing company, your primary business is to sell gas. The more gas you sell, the more margin you make, the more profit you make. And so if there's a model that allows you to say, go to Bekwai or a village after Bekwai, as I said, to sell LPG without having to invest 1 million Ghana cedis, I don't see why you find a challenge in embracing such a model, okay? And so I always advise that they should focus on the opportunity of converting the remaining 63 or so % of Ghanaians to have access to LPG or to use LPG and switch from wood fuels. So as you can see, the activity of the LPG marketing company will just change, but we are not going to lose jobs. We are going to actually create more jobs in that area. And they will manage the entire part of the value chain once the cylinder leaves the bottling plant until the cylinder returns back to the bottling plant. And then the dealer, they actually work with the LPG marketing companies. The difference is usually the LPG marketing company is the name you see, like Trinity Gas or Mamba Gas. But a dealer is a specific station. And we have individuals that operate under a brand. And so the dealers will still operate their facilities. Now they would own the cylinder distribution outlets. So what we are saying is, and you'll see that later, the facility where, for instance, you go to fill now will transition to what we call a cylinder distribution outlet. They can have cylinders there, and then from there, they will go further down into the communities. So the activity of the dealer will still be there. They will actually have the opportunity to go down further into the communities, and by so doing, they would be more active and create jobs. The reseller is the last tier which we've introduced. So now we are saying the dealer should go further down, a step now into the community now, okay, to the last mile. And so these are opportunities for instance, your mother who operates a kiosk or a store in your area to have a cage by the store and have some few cylinders there, and then also serve the community. And so this, for instance, is also an opportunity that comes under the CRM. And then cylinder manufacturing companies. As I mentioned earlier, currently we get cylinders from all sort of places, from China, from India, from all sort of places. And the MPA, through its own inspection, sometimes goes to see some illegal activities or production or refurbishment of cylinders, which would then be introduced onto the market as new cylinders. Okay, so in the model, what we want to do is to have a framework for cylinders. We want to produce all of our cylinders here in Ghana. NPA is taking interest in the regulation of cylinders, production of cylinders. And so under the CRM, we've already engaged the cylinder manufacturing companies. They'll be responsible for manufacture of and refurbishment of cylinders under the CRM. And we are doing that in collaboration with the Ghana Standards Authority and the Ministry of Trade. In terms of strategies for rollout, we have conducted an inspection of most of the refilling stations that are currently in the country. We put them into risk categories. Some of them were high risk. When we say high risk, we look at the setup of the facility, its conformance to our own regulations, and also we look at the siting in terms of an accident, the impact of the community, and other factors. And most of these were considered as high risk. And so we advised some of these stations to begin to think of transitioning some of these stations to the cylinder distribution outlets or cylinder exchange points. Some of the medium to low risk stations, those are the ones that we consider to give it a facelift, to look something similar to the white fuel stations, and then they can operate at also autogas stations. And so we did that risk assessment to assist the LPGMCs and the dealers in terms of transitioning. We also had engagement with them on consideration of how they can repurpose some of their infrastructure to for other purposes as well. In terms of the depots, cylinder exchange points, these are new facilities that we have to construct. And so we've engaged, for instance, we engaged the Ghana Association of Bankers on providing funding for people or service providers who want to invest in these areas. In terms of maintenance, the price build-up and all of that. So we consider the price of LPG, as Dr. Wilson mentioned, as also one of the barriers. And so in that regard, we thought of ways to introduce CRM without having to necessarily increase the price of LPG. If you look at how the petroleum sector works, there's a policy in terms of pricing, which is called the full cost recovery policy. So what we do is, if in determining the price of petroleum products, we consider the various actors and then the cost associated to the activities of each of the actors. And then we aggregate that cost, and then we come up with how to price products such that it covers the activities of all of these service providers so they can recoup their investment. And that is what goes to them as margin. And so in introducing the CRM, because now you have a bottling plant, for instance, there should be a margin in the price build up for the bottling plant. And so we are always conscious of making sure that even when we introduce the margin, it doesn't cause an increase in the price of petroleum products. And what we did before introducing the margin in there was to tender the price of LPG, tender the supply of LPG. What it means is that our imports of LPG, remember I said it's 60%. We usually used to import it in smaller quantities. So company A goes to negotiate, they get a premium, and then they import. Company 2 goes to negotiate, they get a premium, and then they import. But what we realize is that if we put all of our volumes in one basket, and then we are able to negotiate for a better premium, and then we can pass on the benefit we get from there down to the consumer. So that is what we did. Starting from, I think, the first quarter of the year, we did the first tender, and that dropped the premium on the importation of LPG. When I say the premium, that is the charge that the supplier would have placed on the FOB price. And so previously, we used to get premiums of between $70 to $100 per metric ton. But when we did the first tender, for instance, it dropped that premium way down to $30 per metric ton. And so you could see we made a lot of savings. Then we passed on that savings into the price for the consumer. It allowed us to then introduce the bottling plant margin, which was also around the same figure, around $80 per metric ton. So I'm sure you followed the discussion around that time. This allowed us to introduce a cylinder recirculation model without necessarily increasing the price. But then unfortunately for us, the price on the world market in that window and then dollar fluctuations also were not helpful. And so there was still some increment of price in LPG in the window, but it wasn't as a result of CRM. And so we've always been conscious of price, making sure that we don't increase the price or overburden the consumer with the use of LPG. One thing we are also doing is we are still engaging the Ministry of Finance to consider removing of certain taxes so that they can be placed elsewhere, or we can repurpose some of those taxes. Once you do that, you reduce the price of consumer LPG so that consumers can afford. In terms of our preparation, I mentioned earlier we are interested in the activities of cylinder manufacturing companies now. There are there are 4 cylinder manufacturing companies. There's APEB, which came under the 1D, 1F project by government. It is located in the Autusunya area, and they have capacity to do over 2,000 cylinders per shift. In fact, if you put it together, they're able to do about 4,000 cylinders per day. Then you have Sigma in the North Industrial area. They are also able to do 2,000 cylinders per day. They have done a dedicated line for refurbishment quite recently. And then you have Spintex, which is a state-owned company, Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Company, which is also able to do about 3,000 cylinders per day. There's a 4th one, which is called a Warrior Cylinder, which is able to do over 25,000 cylinders or so per day. And we believe with the capacities of these 4 cylinder manufacturing companies, we should be able to produce the quantities we need for us as a country without having to import. By so doing, you create jobs and you retain value. And so these are areas, again, where the engineering community can consider going to do some partnerships. Of course, we are ready to facilitate, to research into even the sizes of the design of the cylinders and all of that. How good is it for us? Do we need to make changes and all of that? Because we realize, for instance, if you look at the cylinders we used, we realize the handles does not allow us to stack one on top of other in terms of transportation. So that is a change that now we are introducing. In partnership with GSA, we've come up with a design that allows the cylinders to stack on top of each other to aid with transportation. So I think these are still areas where engineering can look into in terms of innovations and new ideas. The cylinder companies, these are all companies that are established, already operating, they are ready. And as you can see, they've begun supplying cylinders to the cylinder bottling plants. In terms of the bottling plants, we have 4 of them ready. As I mentioned, the bottling plants are key. That is where the main activity goes on. So the bottling plants, we have GOIL, our own state-owned company, GOIL, which has 2 facilities. One in Tema, which is able to do over 23,000 cylinders per day. That's the filling. It's able to fill over 24,000 cylinders per day. That facility is 100% complete and currently under test run. And then GOIL has a second facility here in Kumasi, and it's able to do over 7,000 cylinders per day. That facility is also 100% complete, and it's also under the first phase of test run. And then we have Blue Ocean facility in Tema, which has been sitting for some time now. They are able to do about 24,000 cylinders per day. And then we have New Gas in Tema, a bit of updated. They are also complete. They are able to do close to 20,000 cylinders per day. And these are all companies that have majority of Ghanaian ownership. These are Ghanaian companies who are also operating in the space. And as I mentioned, they are ready to serve the market with cylinders. And with these capacities, we have enough cylinder bottling capacity to even begin rollout in the entire part of the country. Now, if you go back to the model I showed, LPG distribution now becomes more of an FMCG, a fast-moving consumer good, just like we distribute, say, Guinness or some of those products. And so we believe, although you have just a bottling plant in Kumasi, you could, for instance, serve the Western area by having a good plan in terms of supplying the cylinders to the market. Then you have cylinder depots. These are areas for investment, as I mentioned. And basically, what we mean by a cylinder depot is an area where you can have cylinders in bulk and then break them into smaller quantities. Then we have what we call the cylinder distribution outlets, or the big cylinder exchange points. So I mentioned earlier, if you see the picture on the right, that is an old refilling station, like what we know, what we see in our communities. That is an old one which has been converted to the cylinder distribution outlet. And so here you can have about 500 to 1,000, 1,500 cylinders here. And then from here, you then take it further into the communities to put them in these cages, where now consumers will be a walking distance away to pick one. So that is a cylinder exchange point also in the communities. And this could be anywhere, in the supermarket, in the white fuel station, behind our house, because usually when it comes to LPG, the filling activity is where most of the risk is. Once you take the filling activity out of that area, you reduce the safety challenges in distributing LPG. Then, of course, the transportation trucks. We already have some companies, Express Gas, that transports cylinders. That's a mini CRM on their own. They are already delivering to households. And this is what we mean by transporting cylinders. Of course, you would have the most usable transportation we have in our towns these days assisting us, like the tricycles and all of that, being part of the distribution of LPG. And so, again, in terms of our preparation activities, as Dr. mentioned, we've been doing a lot of sensitization. We launched Gas, which is an education we brought to just educate people to switch to LPG. And then we followed it now with the message of CRM coming on board to bring LPG more closer to communities. And we've covered the entire country. We've been traveling around to all the regions. We'll be in Ashanti region actually next week, do an engagement. We'll go to Western North, and then we'll cover the rest of the country. Again, on our social media handles, we've started putting messages out there to educate people on the harmful effects of use of charcoal and firewood, and encouraging them to switch to LPG. We've had several questions. We've prepared some FAQs. I'm sure we'll get some good questions from you. We'll respond to some of them, and hope you become clear in terms of what you want to do with the CRM. So basically, when we start, all you have to do as a consumer, as an existing consumer, is to take your cylinder, you go to a cylinder exchange point, you will be registered. The purpose of registration is so that the dealer knows Kofi Mensah has come for my cylinder. He lives, or is a customer, he lives in Cortes, so that they can service you, give you a good service and follow up with all of that. And so you register and you have access to a cylinder. They'll take your old cylinder, you take all of them to cylinder refurbishment company. The ones that are fit for purpose, we branded and reintroduced into the scheme. The ones that are obsolete, we will discard them, we'll take them to the scrapyard. Again, it's an area for research. We can get some research into how we can repurpose some of these cylinders. And then for those who are new consumers, they will go and register. They may be asked to put a security deposit, which will not be the cost of the cylinder. And then they can also access cylinders and go to use gas. So you see, then we even take the burden of somebody have to purchase a new cylinder before they can use LPG. We take that burden also away. And so when we start, that is how it's going to be. There are going to be different sizes of cylinders. We want to start with 3 kgs, there'll be 6 kgs, there'll be 12.5 kgs, and then 15 kgs. So it'll be different sizes of cylinders for you to use. Also, there will be pay as you go use services. And that's an area also where engineers can come up with innovations of how to allow people to use LPG in smaller quantities. And so I would end the presentation here. Thank you very much for the attention. And I look forward to your comments and then your suggestions. Thank you.
Let's do it once here. I would like to give you about 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, and then if you have anything to say, you can just tell us. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm DO3 Apia Anthony. I'm the District Fire Commander for KNUST Fire Station. And like when the speaker mentioned, during the discussions at the top level, we were involved in everything. Honestly, we believe that the cylinder recirculation model is going to help the Ghana National Fire Service. We've had challenges with siting of gas stations at various neighborhoods. We believe that people go and buy gas and come and use the home, but nobody wants the gas station to be sited closer to his or her home. So now this model is going to redefine how the cylinders are, the gas is stored and the cylinders are also moved. So we believe it's a policy that is going to help the GNFS and is going to help the country as a whole. We hope each and everyone will embrace it and come on board to make it successful. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I would like to acknowledge the presence, if there are, okay, of certain departments and institutions over here. Do we have the Department of Food Science and Technology here? Any representative? Department of Petroleum Engineering, okay, I'm here. I saw our HOD a while ago, but he had to go and attend to certain engagements. Department of Chemical Engineering, all right, the students here. Department of Petrochemical Engineering, okay, you're here. Department of Biochemistry and Biotechnology, none, okay, that's fine. Please, we have the Dean of the School of Business here. The Dean, the School of Business. All right. Director, Center for Applied Research and Innovation in Supply Chain Africa, Cariska, KNUST. All right. What about GRASAG? Any representative from GRASAG? Okay, all right, great. SRC, okay, all right. Environmental Science Department. What about fellows of the Energy Center? Fellows of the Brew Hammond Energy Center? Fellows, okay. Some of them are at the back, okay. And the staff of the university community? Staff, okay, all right. Okay, so we are at our Q&A session. I would like to start or commence the Q&A session with a question for our speaker. Mr. Boache, I have a question for you. During the keynote address by Doc, I heard him mention that as of now, we have overall outreach or coverage, that's about 37%. You're making about 50 plus in urban areas and 15% in the rural areas, right? And you envisage making about 50% in the year 2030. That's in terms of implementation strategy. But what about safety measures? What specifics safety protocols and measures are being put in place to prevent accidents and to ensure safe handling and distribution of the LPG cylinders? That's my question. Okay, I don't know if you would like to respond now. Probably after you've responded, then we'll have other questions. All right.
Since you are the coordinator, let me just take yours, and then we will do it in rounds of 5, so I can take them down and then I'll answer them. Okay, so as I mentioned, we did a framework and we've come up with guidelines for the value chain, for everything. We have guidelines for the siting of bottling plant, the construction of bottling plant, for which as regulators, we are going to make sure the service providers follow. For instance, if somebody brings an application to site a bottling plant, we are working with the EPA, Ghana Fire Services, FDI to make sure they site it properly. That's number one. Even and the other infrastructure as well. So we have guidelines for siting of bottling plants, for cylinder exchange points, for cylinder distribution outlets, and all of that. We also have guidelines for transportation of cylinders, in which, for instance, we have given an indication, as I mentioned, of the truck design, such that it's able to hold the cylinders in place, and so that when the cylinders are being moved, they don't fall off and all of that. For instance, with the cylinder exchange points, we have made certain considerations. They must have fire extinguishers. I'm sure fire will not renege on that. They will do their own inspections. MPA will do our inspections. We'll make sure they conform to some of these guidelines that we've put in place. And so we've put in several guidelines, and we are not going to renege on our responsibility. We would make sure that the service providers follow these guidelines to the letter. But then we are also educating the public on the safe use of LPG. But as I explained, you will see that the CRM takes a lot of the safety challenges out of the model, and so we believe we should be able to have a safe model. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Boache. Do we have any questions? All right, kindly help me pass the microphone to the lady over there. Please, when you get a microphone, introduce yourself, your department, if you're a student, okay, and then you ask your questions very briefly.
I'm Kabuko Kabo, and I'm a computer engineering student. I'm just a bit concerned about those who are going to carry their gas, because I feel it's too heavy. That's one. And then two.
Come again, your question.
Those who will be carrying the gas, how would you load the trucks? Are they going to be human beings? And also, if I want to buy half of I can't afford a full cylinder, how do I purchase it? And also, what if
How many questions do you have? Two. Okay, two are fine. Okay. Others also want to ask. That's all. Besides, you allow you. You last question. Let it ask. Yeah, first person.
Those who use the gas and mess up the gas, and like some people, when you look at their gas cylinder, it's like oily and all of those things. So if they send it to the station, what happens to such a gas? Is it that you fill it and then redistribute it in that state? Because I'm concerned. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's have another person. Yes, a gentleman is fine.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Michael Osefrimpong. I'm a petrochemical engineering student in the chemical engineering department. So my question has got to do majorly with the economics associated with everything. So while transporting gas from, let's say, Atuabo to any of the filling stations, the refueling stations, comparing the volume of gas that can be compressed per trip, comparing the amount of gas compared per trip, and now we are introducing substations where we are going to be refilling. I'm a bit concerned. That means that we'll be paying more for transporting a smaller amount of gas per unit time. That means we're going to spend more time, more money on fuel. We'll need more people for that, while we can just, do it the old way. I understand it's going to really help with the accessibility issue. That's really going to solve it. But then in a not so settling economy like Ghana, does that mean that I believe that the pricing is going to later affect the end users that we are trying to protect? Thank you.
All right, thank you for your question. Two more, and then Mr. Boache will respond.
Please, my name is Dolores Ayunkwakusi from the Petroleum Engineering Department. And when I was looking at the slides, most of the images of the cylinders were metal cylinders. And looking back, there was a time where people were encouraged to use fiberglass cylinders because they were, according to research, they were safer because during an explosion, it dissipates the gas rather than explodes. And in a nutshell, it was considered safer than metal cylinders. So my question is, with the CRM, are we going to do away with the fiberglass cylinder, since most of the images you showed were metal cylinders, or there would be an introduction of fiberglass? That's my question.
All right, one more person, one more, and then he'll respond. One more.
Okay, I'm Philip Avono from Computer Engineering Department. Please, my question is, with the metallic cylinder, we are not able to see the level of gas when it is finishing. So I want to ask if there is any solution to that, because you can be cooking and all of a sudden, if you don't really take care, you run out of gas. Thank you.
Hello. Let's allow him to ask his question. Are you done?
Yes.
All right. Thank
with
you.
the- okay.
Thank you.
That's a nice question. I heard a lot of murmuring around here, the professors. I'm sure they probably want to give you a research topic now to study how one can determine the level of gas in their cylinders. But that's, a correct observation. There are ways of, knowing when you touch where you feel the cold, this liquefied gas. Usually people would say where you touch the cylinder on the side and then down somewhere, if it's cold, that part is, where the gas is and all of that. But that's, for instance, an area where we have to look into in terms of research. But in my presentation, I did mention pay-as-you-go services. There's technology, for instance, where LPG marketing companies come to put a 14.5 or 15 kg cylinder in your house, and they put a meter on top. And with such a meter, you can know the quantity of gas. Okay, sometimes it's connected to an app. You can look on your app and then see the quantity of gas still remaining. For such a service, they would know and even come to exchange for you once it runs out. And so, to the best of my knowledge, with the use of additional technology like meters, you can be able to know the quantities of gas left in your cylinder. With that, what is done is they build a technology. There's some form of sensor usually placed in the cylinder that allows them to do that reading. Okay, so that's an area of research that you can look to. But then, of course, for the fiberglass, you can see the quantity, the fiberglass or the composite cylinder, you can see the quantity in there. So the first question was with regards to concern with loading of the truck. Yes. So from the cylinder manufacturing, at the cylinder manufacturing company and at the bottling plant, they mostly use what we call these devices. Is it cranes? Forklifts. They actually use forklifts in these areas. Now there are two ways to go about this. Again, it's an area of research. In certain areas where they use what we call pallets. The pallets allows you to, let's say, put 6 or 12 cylinders in a cage, some cage like that, and then use a forklift to lift it, and then you place it in the vehicle. There are certain areas where they have smaller forklifts, that's manual one, it looks like a trolley, a small trolley, where manually they put the labor guys there will put, let's say, 4 cylinders on that, cut it into the car, leave it, and then come and then pick another one. And so there are these two ways. For the forklift, it means you have to have the forklift at the bottling plant and at the depot at least. So when you move it in bulk, because with the bulk, those trucks will be doing between 700 and 1,000 cylinders. So it makes sense to, for instance, use those cages I mentioned. But then what we've realized is those cages, again, increase the weight of the cylinders on the truck, or it increases the gross vehicle weight. Okay, and so that is an area, for instance, we are looking at. Some bottling plants intend using some of the pallets, but some of the bottling plants also actually imported some of the pallets, and they were quite heavy, and so they intend to use the manual loading. Okay, so there's option for both manual loading and also using the forklift. But between the bottling plant and the depots, they would largely use the forklift to move the cylinders. It is at the exchange point level, which is in small quantities. So let's say they are dropping 10. The driver comes with a mate, they drop, let's say, 10 cylinders, they move to the next point. So that's how the loading and unloading is going to be. You want to buy in bits or smaller quantities, you can do currently. There's an industry term we call tot, where you go and buy in smaller quantities. You would agree with me that this never used to be the case, but these days times are hard, and so people go to buy in smaller quantities. What I start with in my engagement with people is, for instance, you go to the place twice in a week to buy 15 cedis, You take a vehicle, you go, sometimes you don't even quantify the cost of going to the place. Then you go and buy a small quantity and come back, and then you go back again. For me, I think economically, we have to educate people that it actually increases what we eventually pay in buying that gas. Also, one thing is that, as I mentioned, we are now introducing smaller sizes of cylinders. So there's, for instance, there's 3 kg, okay? So the 3 kg, for instance, you can buy the 3 kg. One of the reasons why you would go there and buy a small quantity is that you may own a 14.5 kg cylinder. So that's all you have. LPG, you have to take that 14.5 there. But under the CRM, once you register with the dealer, you are not tied to one size. It doesn't matter whether you brought 6 kg, 3 kg, 14.5 kg into the scheme when we started. If you come today and you are like, this week I don't have much money, I can only afford a 3 kg. You take a 3 kg, you go, you use, you bring it back when it's empty. If you are expecting guests the following week and you think now you need a 14.5 kg, you take a 14.5 kg, you go to use, you finish, you bring it back. And so you are now not tied to one cylinder or one size of cylinder. But then every time you go, what you can afford is what you pay for. And so we believe with this and with a lot of education and sensitization, we should be able to get people comfortable with the sizes that we have, which I think is good enough options for people to use LPG. And then you asked the very old cylinders that will be brought in. I mentioned earlier, for us, we want to even get all of the old cylinders in our homes. As I mentioned, in our engagements, we had used their cylinder for almost 15 years. People do not know cylinders have an expiry date. It's usually on the base or on the handle, and it's mostly 10 years. Fire people will tell you, best practices, after 10 years, you take it to the cylinder manufacturing company. The cylinder may look nice, but the inside may have, been compromised. So you take it to a cylinder manufacturing company, they do all the necessary tests, and then when it's fit for purpose, it is recertified for another 5 years. Okay? You go and use it again, another 5 years. That is the best practice of using a cylinder. But most of us don't even know refurbishment company. They will test every cylinder, they will do pneumatic tests, they will do pressure tests and all of that. The ones that are still fit for purpose, they will be refurbished, they will be reintroduced, branded and reintroduced into the scheme. If it is not good for fit for purpose, you will discard it. But for you as a consumer, because you brought something, you will still have access to a cylinder anytime you want to use. And one of the thing I tell people is, as I said, it has a lifetime. A cylinder has a lifetime. But then once you get into the scheme, you use a cylinder till God calls you. Okay. And so that is how cylinders will be treated under the model. And anytime I have been to the bottling plants, anytime the cylinder goes to the bottling plant, it goes through a mini maintenance routine, let me call it that way. So it is put onto the carousel. The first, they check, they decant it if there is any small quantity left inside. They check for leakages. Then it goes through a cleaning process. It goes through a washer that washes the cylinders. It's dried before it begins to be filled. And once it's filled, it's also checked for the weight, for the volume, and all of that. And then it is capped. You see, when you buy some of the water bottles, I think Belacqua, there's a rubber on the top that shows that it has not been compromised. So that's how the cylinder will come. Once it is filled, there will be some rubber on top like that. So once you get it, you know that the dealer has not gone to use half and come to place it back. Okay? And so, yes, in terms of the cylinders, it will be refurbished when it has to, but then there's maintenance anytime it goes back to the bottling plant. Emmanuel asked about the economics of transporting the gas cylinders instead of in bulk. Whether it would add on to the price or make LPG more expensive. So there's a mechanism for payment for transportation of petroleum products. We have two mechanisms. We have two items in that mechanism, a PDM and then UPPF. PDM is primary distribution margin, and then you have what you call the UPPF, the Uniform Pricing Mechanism, also, which ensures that the prices of petroleum products are same everywhere in the country. So for instance, GOIL is not supposed to sell, let's say, LPG at a different price in Accra than in Tamale. If GOIL is selling LPG in Accra at, let's say 10 cedis per kilo, they have to sell the same in Tamale at 10 cedis per kilo. It is this mechanism that ensures that. And so that is the fund from which payment of transportation of petroleum products is paid for, okay? And so the UPPF fund, which is in the price buildup of LPG, is going to cover for the cost of transportation of the cylinders. And we have done some maths. Of course, you made a very valid point there. We've realized in terms of transporting LPG with the bulk, you are able to make some savings as compared to transporting them in the cylinders, because the cylinder weight in itself reduces the quantity you can transport on a truck. But we've done some mathematics, and then we think we can still transport without incurring a lot of cost on the consumer. And so UPPF has looked at that, and we can still be able to achieve the same effect. There is also, I think the last one, metal cylinders. What happens to fiberglass? Oh yes, so yes, the composite cylinders or the fiberglass cylinders, which are, those ones implode in case of an accident, whereas the cylinders explode, and so they are deemed to be more safer. They are quite expensive though. Under the CRM model, some of the service providers have procured some of the fiberglass cylinders for that market also. So if you have a fiberglass cylinder and you want to use fiberglass, you can go to such service providers and also have access to fiberglass or composite cylinders.
Oh, let's give it up for him. Okay.
I guess if you do the entire value chain evaluation of transportation, when I represented in this program in WA, the chairman said that he stays in Tumu and he buys LPG in WA, which is 120 kilometers. So he takes a cylinder in his vehicle and drive from Tumu 120 kilometers to come and buy LPG. So the benefit is to we the consumers, because you are no longer going to take a cylinder even from campus here maybe and go to Atonsu or wherever you will buy. So when you do the aggregate, you realize that it's still better with the CRM transportation. But that was a brilliant point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because of time, we'll do one more round, okay? One more round of questions. I can identify some of my students. Make sure you ask questions, yes? Daniel, what are you sitting there for? Where are the TAs, please? All right. Senior members, please, do you have any questions? Do senior members have questions? Would you allow that? You have a question, Prof? Okay. Dr. Lena, all right.
Please invite the assignments ideal. Okay. I wanted to know if NPA is aware that the cylinders that they are selling in town, most of them are not new, as they say. They've sprayed them. So if you buy it, in less than 1 year, you see it is rusting. So I want to know what they are doing, if they are aware, and what they are doing about it. And secondly, where can we get a proper cylinder? Now that they are introducing this one, I think that one is not needed.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Dr. Meza.
Yes, very quick one. What incentives do you have in place to consumers to turn in the old bottles? There may be competing needs for the bottles. You know, the condemned guys are there ready to give you a few CDs so that they collect. I can count about 6 of them in my house, and to turn them in for free, I would want something back for giving it up.
Okay, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Professor Gabriel Techi from Mechanical Engineering Department. I still have a problem with the affordability of the product. This 50% target that you have set for yourselves by 2030, I don't know if this will make any significant impact, because if you look at the price at the pump how, if you look at the various components, the international price, the price at the international market, and all the various components that go into determine the price, let's say at the petrol pump, how are you going to take off? How, what kind of, how are you going to convince your people that those components, some of those silly, what's it called? How do you call, what's the term that we use in Ghana? Nuisance. Thank you very much. How are you going to take off those nuisance taxes to make the product affordable?
All right, so we'll take 2 more students, okay? Just 2 more students. 1 gentleman and 1 lady. Okay, since you are there, just give it to the gentleman over there.
No, I have a question.
Somebody has a mic already. Oh, sorry, Doc, I didn't see you.
Yes, my name is Jones, Civil Department. I'm interested in the business aspect. So if I want to take advantage of any of the change, how do I go about that? Thank you.
Okay.
Professor. You know me already, so I'm concerned about the sustainability of this. In Ghana, we have something they call 9-day wonder. I mean, we start, it's a nice thing, but then after 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 years, the whole thing comes to a stop, and then I don't have a cylinder that I will use again for gas. So what is the sustainability of this program?
I think this is a round of senior members. Oh. Students. Okay, let's.
Yeah, hello, and thank you. Yeah, so Charles from Department of Mechanical Engineering. I missed the presentation because of some engagement I had. In the bigger scheme of things, in the long term, have you thought about, I mean, your authority, thought about developing like central distribution systems in every district or region of the country, where you will have a large plant and then lay pipes, instead of this cylinder thing? You see how complicated it is. Laying pipes. You can always start from some place, isn't it? You can always start from some place. We brand some things as difficult, but to me, you can start from some place and build on. Have you thought about, in the long term, having central distribution plants and lay pipes to various residential facilities in the country? I mean, for people who are willing to pay. And instead of using cylinders, distribute gas, meter the gas, distribute it to residential facilities for use, as is being done elsewhere. You can always start somewhere. I tell people, you work out the economics for what you are doing and what I'm talking about. And then, have you thought about that? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll allow Mr. Boachi to respond to these questions. Okay. If we have time, I'll give the students an opportunity to ask more questions.
All right, thank you. So let me see. Okay, so I think Professor Vida's question was the first one, right? Okay, so sure. I'll be snappy. Okay, so the question was on cylinders in town. Most are not new. Yes, in fact, our inspection guys, anytime we get a hint of some of these, our inspection guys go around. And I will attest to the fact that we've been to certain parts of Makola and places where we've gone to see people, trying to weld. They use welding machines just to galvanize the cylinder, repaint it, and introduce it onto market. Previously, they were not necessarily under our regulation. GSA was more responsible for the regulation. But then, as I said, we have taken interest in that. And at the CRM, what we are going to do is we are going to license these cylinder manufacturing companies, and the cylinders are going to come from them. And anytime you have or you see such a cylinder, usually when you call our consumer lines, we try to investigate to find the roots of where those cylinders are coming from. And most often we're able to trace and then nab most of these people who do that. And so yeah, they are quite in the system, but under the CRM, it will be a thing of the past. Yeah. Dr. Mensah asked about the old bottles. How do we incentivize you to bring them? Doc, our idea is, in fact, we said we wanted to have an initial implementation of 5 years. We anticipate by 5 years, we should have recalled most of the cylinders. so there will come a time where the cylinder will be obsolete. You can't use it for anything again. But currently, you're asking the value for not taking it to the scrap yard. We are engaging the scrap dealers and all of that, with regards to how they should treat some of these things that are coming to them. We also encourage consumers, because I mentioned that for a new user, they pay a security deposit. So for you, you're not bringing it for free. That is your security deposit. Yes. So if you bring 6 cylinders, you can actually take 6 cylinders under CRM. But then the point is, you don't need to have 6 cylinders anymore, because just behind your house, there's an exchange point. So if you have friends or you have sisters who are not using, you can, let's say, give them one, they bring that in, and then they also begin to have access to a cylinder. So remember, you're not bringing it for free. You do not have to pay an initial deposit because you brought in a cylinder. But new consumers may pay an initial security deposit. Okay, so that's the point on that. Professor Tachi talked about affordability, the price at the pump, and how we can convince government to remove nuisance taxes. Yes, so for instance, an argument we are presenting in our new paper, and this engagement has been ongoing, is that when you go to the health ministry, they have a huge bill in terms of diseases that they have to cure every year, coming from respiratory, infections and all of that. That comes from the smoke in our homes, even the eyesight, the lungs, and all of that. And so we are, for instance, making an argument that once you remove taxes from LPG and you improve the household air quality, then you can have a reduction in the bill you are spending on the health sector. Okay, so that is one way we are looking at this. The other way we are looking at it is if we can remove some of these taxes and place them elsewhere. So for instance, this is an example. I'm not saying we are doing it. If you can remove a tax from LPG and put it on petrol and diesel, because petrol and diesel, the volumes are quite huge. And so the effect may not be significant. It may add 1 peso or 2 peso to the price of petrol and diesel. Everybody uses petrol and diesel. But LPG is a social product. And so by so doing, you would have reduced the price of LPG. The government will still get its revenue because you are getting it elsewhere. So we are thinking of some of these ways, and we are presenting a paper to our Ministry of Finance to consider the removal of certain taxes. But as you rightly said, we price our petroleum products pegged to world prices and various reference markets. And that is an area also we are looking at. Once we are able to do majority of our LPG local in Ghana, if Centio comes on, we get other refineries, let's say 80 or 90% is coming from Ghana, then there is no need to reference, our price to international market. We can then look at the whole pricing structure and maybe see if we can take some components out. So that's also something we can see once we get more sources locally. Professor John of Civil, you talk about the business side. Yes, so for the high-end business side, if you want to have a bottling plant, if you want to have become an LPGMC, you come directly to the MPA. If you go to our website, we have the requirements for operating in each of these facilities or becoming a service provider in the petroleum downstream. But for the low side, if you want to become a cylinder exchange point or a reseller, we want to use the existing structures and service providers. So we encourage you to go to an existing LPG marketing company. Okay, so you register with them. They will come and see, for instance, the land that you have that you want to use the exchange point. They will submit it to us. And then we will come and inspect that land. If there is no fire-related issues and all of that, fire people will also come and do their inspections. Once it's approved, then they will submit an application. We give you the construction permit, you construct, and then we give you an operating permit to operate. So if you want to become an exchange point, you can come through an existing service provider, which is an LPG dealer. But if you want to operate in the high end, you want to become an LPG marketing company, a bottling plant, or something of that sort, you can go to our website, get the requirements, and then once you apply, we can consider your application. Okay, yeah. Prof Emeritus, sustainability, that's a very good point. Yes, in fact, we considered, although we want this structure to be market-driven, government has taken an interest, for instance, in the area of procurement of the cylinders. We could have just left it to the bottling plants to just buy cylinders as and when they want to do, but we have set up what we call the cylinder LPG promotion fund. And so the margin the $80 per metric ton we introduced into the price build-up quite recently, about 36 or so percent of it, $36 of it will come into the cylinder investment fund. And so we at NPA have an estimation of the numbers of cylinders in circulation. We have an estimation of how many we want to add to get to the 50%. And we have an estimated of, a number of the population, number of households using LPG. And so we are not going to leave investment of cylinders solely in the hands of bottling plants, just for them to invest per their business, imperatives. We are having interest, we are going to make sure that we invest and we inject adequate cylinders such that anytime you want LPG, there's a cylinder available for you. That's one of the things we are doing to make sure that the model is sustainable, so that at a point you go and then there are no cylinders. And so we are doing that. We are having other strategies that we are implementing to make sure that the project is sustainable. Okay, and Charles, I think that's the last question. Central distribution using pipelines. Yes, so pipeline infrastructure, always expensive. What I would say is, even now, there are times where we get applications. So for instance, Reggie Manuel, they are doing estates, they apply to the NPA and we give a waiver. And so they site, let's say, a small tank, and then they distribute to the households within that community. But in terms of doing large-scale pipelines, you need a pipeline from the source. And so, for instance, CNG is in my portfolio. With natural gas, for instance, what we are doing is, we are currently doing a feed on how to have a city gate. So once you have a city gate, then you can have pipelines from there going for different purposes. And one of the lines we want to introduce is, for instance, CNG for transportation, so that we can do pipelines to the filling stations to have CNG there. And then also we can think of domestic usage. Once you have a city gate, then you can now send gas, LNG, CNG, LPG to households. But this is a medium to long-term consideration. We believe with models as the CRM, you should still be able to reach majority of consumers that we want to switch to LPG. Yeah, but remember, there's also energy transition, which actually our plan is by 2060, we should have converted majority of the populace to use more cleaner sources of cooking, which is renewable energy, electricity, and all of that. And so we are also mindful of investing so much in the petroleum system, which energy transition experts say will be dying very soon. Maybe you can advise us. You are the you are the researchers. So yes, that's an area we are considering as well.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Boache. Because of time, we can't allow any further questions. It's an email, okay. My last slide. The last slide. I can move to my last slide. UITS, kindly move to the last slide. If you have... Okay, but... Okay, all right. They will do their best to share their email so that if you have further questions, you can send them an email on it. Also, kindly look for the social media platforms or handles of the Brew Hammond Energy Center. Okay? There's a YouTube video of what is going on here. You can go to the comment section and post your questions over there. They will be duly answered. I'll call on Dr. David Atokwansa for the final remarks. Let's clap for him as he comes.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think it's been a very fruitful and highly engaging session, but it has to come to an end. We've spent 2 hours already. So let me quickly go through my list of acknowledgements. So Provost and his representative, Professor Momade, thank you very much for sitting throughout the session. We are really grateful to you. To the organizing team, Dr. Kilson and your team, please, let's see you by hand. Thank you so much for such a fantastic job done. GHI is supposed to be here, GHI representative. Dr. PJ, thanks for coming. Our team from the KNUST Fire Station, thank you very much for honoring our invitation. Fellows of the center who are here, please, let's see you. Fellows of the center, thank you very much. It's a busy time for us. Teaching is in full swing. Also, the media team from the URO and the e-learning center, thank you for coming to support us. Professor Che, yes, he is director of the Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency at KSTU. He responded to us at very short notice. We are grateful to you. I think I've covered everyone. Of course, our national service personnel, thank you very much for all the hard work. If you are here, let's see you by hand. National Service Energy Center. Right, thank you so much. SRC is here. Grassak, you've been acknowledged already. We're grateful to you. If I've left anyone out, I'll buy you beer later. So to our team from NPA, I think the provost in his capacity has already acknowledged, he's expressed his gratitude to you for the prompt response to our invitation to come and share on this very important subject. So we are confident that the engagement will continue and that we'll be able to forge a win-win partnership. A few announcements will be for the students who are here. I think you've been sorted out already. The fellows and invited guests will go to the engineering guest house for lunch together with our team from the NPA, provided your flight is not in the next hour. Yeah, so on this note, I would like to thank all of you for making this a success. Of course, Dr. Atukwe, thank you for moderating this really nicely. So I think we can move to the next stage of the program and conclude. Thank you.
Thank you too. Let's give it up for him. Okay, so I'll invite Dr. Eunice Sefa Kodogbe for the closing prayer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Shall we pray? Dear Lord, we thank you so much for today. Thank you for giving us life and fair weather and making this program a success. Thank you for the insightful discussions that have been held here today. We pray, oh God, that you will go a long way, even to help with the development that we all seek for. In the name of Jesus, we pray for safe journey for our guests who will be going back to their destinations. We give you all the praise and honor. In Jesus' name we have prayed. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Dogbe. Thanks so much. Kindly take note. If you have any questions, okay, you can send them to the NPA at oboachi, okay, OBOACHIE @npa.gov.gh. Oboachi @npa.gov.gh. Is that okay? Okay. All right. So I'm just being told that senior members and invited guests will have a group picture just here after we close. Students, kindly wait, okay, for the invited guests and dignitaries to leave first before you leave. And please don't leave any letters around. Students, is that okay? Great.